Hello guys and welcome. In the previous videos we set up the lobby system. Now in this video we're gonna implement the relay service. So you see that when we switch the status of all our players in the lobby to the ready, then we have the option to start the game and actually enter the game session. So let's go ahead and take care of that button. Before we do that, let's go ahead and install the relay package. Also, let's install the Netcode for game objects. That's what we need for the game session. And we can go to the Unity dashboard in the projects. We can select our project and then launch the relay service. So this is it. The relay service is launched. Now let's go back to the editor. So first let's go ahead and create another menu. I am going to name this one Start Menu. So it just contains a image to cover the screen, this black image, text to show the status, an image to use as the background, the gray one, and another image as the green bar that we can change the value to show a loading bar. So basically whenever we want to start our game session, we are going to open this menu and wait until the game session starts. So let's go into the scripts menu, create a new script and name it starting session menu. So if I open this, we need to inherit from panel and use these services. Let's also clear this. So we need a text for the status text and an image for the progress bar. So I also create two variables. Both of them are booleans. The first one is allow scene activation and the other one is loading. So basically when the host starts the game, we're going to set this loading to true for all the clients, but we're gonna set the allow scene activation to false. And we only set this to true whenever relay allocation has been over and you have a join code. Let's actually create a function to load a scene. It is going to get a string as the scene name and use scene manager load scene async to open that scene. So there is a variable called allow scene activation in the async operation. So basically if we set this to false, the scene that we are going to load is not going to be 100% loaded. It is going to load as much as it can, and then it waits for us to set this allow scene activation to true. Also, let's override the open and set the progress bar fill amount to 0. So we have two functions here. The first one, we're gonna name it start game by lobby. So we pass a lobby and we are going to also pass a boolean saying wait for confirmation. First we open that, we set the text. We can use the values inside lobby.data to load different scenes based on our need. For example, if the map is an airfield, we might want to open a scene that has the airfield environment. If it is another map, then we might want to open another scene. So using that, we can use a scene name. For now, I'm just going to create a new scene, name it session map 1. So we are going to create this scene in a minute. There's also the game mode and other variables you might want to use. This is allow scene activation. So if this boolean wait for confirmation is true, then we are going to set this to false, which means wait until we confirm the game. If loading is equal to false, we're going to set it to true and we are going to call load scene async. And whenever we want to confirm the loading, we are just going to call this function start game confirm. It's going to set allow scene activation to true. So that's basically is our start session menu. Let's go to the editor. Now we can select our start menu, assign the script, choose the ID start, that is the container, that is the status text, and that is the progress bar. So that's for our loading. Now let's open the lobby menu. Here I need to create two booleans. One of them is started, the other one is joining. So whenever the game is about to start, we are going to set this true, and whenever we have a join code, we are going to set is joining to true. So let's go to this function, start the game. This is the button that is going to initiate the relay service. Also, we need another button and name it set lobby starting. So basically, host is going to call a start game, and then it's going to create a relay allocation. Then it is going to call this function, which informs every other client in the lobby that the game is about to start. So first, let's go ahead and use a relay service. And here in the start game function, we're going to open the loading first. Then we are going to use relay service instance create allocation async, and we are going to pass the lobby max players. After that, we are going to get the singleton of our network manager. By the way, we're going to add the network manager to our scene in a few minutes. And then we are going to get the component Unity transport that is attached to the network manager. And then we are going to create a new relay server data. We're going to pass the allocation. For the connection type, we're going to pass DTLS, and the transport set relay server data, and we pass that data. Then we are going to use relay service instance get join code async, and then we are going to pass this allocation and allocation ID. So after this, at this point, our relay service is ready and clients can connect to it. So we're going to call set lobby starting, so it's going to inform other clients, and then we're going to get the instance of the start session menu, the menu we just created. So we're going to call the heartbeat a little bit faster. Then we're going to unsubscribe to the events because we don't need them anymore. And then we are going to call the start session menu start game by lobby. We're going to pass the lobby, and we don't have to wait for confirmation because this is the host. So now let's take care of the other clients. Here, when we informing them, we are actually going to update the lobby. We are going to add a new variable called started. So whenever the lobby gets this variable, it means the game has started. Using that, we are going to update our lobby, and that's it for this function. Now, for our clients to be able to join the relay service, they need to have a join code. So using this function, they can join, but first they need a join code. So to get that, I am going to create a new function and name it check start game status. In this function, we are going to get a reference to the starting session menu. Then we're going to check the lobby data to see if there is a variable started inside that data. If it is, we're going to set the is started to true. Then we're going to look for a join code. So if it contains a key called join code, then we're going to get the value for it. So first, we're going to check the panel to see if it is loading or not. If it is not loading and the started has been checked, then we are going to start game by lobby. We're going to pass the lobby, and we have to wait for confirmation because we're the client, not the host, and we need a join code before we could enter the game session. So for the next level, we're going to check to see if joining is false. If it is, and panel it is loading, and then join code is valid, it's not null or empty, and then panel has not been confirmed yet. In this case, just in case, we're gonna call that one more time, but the important thing is this join game, because now we have a join code. So we are going to call join game, and we're gonna pass the join code here. So first, let's call this check start game status here in the open function. So this is the open function. We're going to call it here. Also, let's call it in the on lobby changed. Here we're gonna call it as well. And another place we could call it in the update to make sure it is getting called, at least from one of these places. So in the update, we check if we're not the host and we are not joining, then we're gonna call check start game status. Now back to the join game. So to do this, first we are going to make sure the join code is not null, set the is joining to true, open the loading, and then we are going to use relay service instance join allocation async. We're going to pass the join code. If it is okay, then we are going to get a reference to the Unity transport on the network manager, and then we're going to create the relay server data, and we're going to set the relay server data for our transport. Then we get the reference to the start panel, unsubscribe from the events, and then we are going to confirm our start. Now let's also go to the unchanged. If the lobby is deleted, we might need to set the is started to false, is joining to false. The same thing here on kicked, and that should be enough for here. Now let's go to the Unity editor. So here we can go ahead and start creating our network manager. Just gonna create a game object and attach network manager to it. I'm going to set the transport on Unity transport, and that's it for now. Let's go and create another scene. So create a scene. We named the scene here in our start session menu session map 01. So I'm going to name this one session map 01, and let's open this. And before anything, I am going to add it to the build settings. First, we need a session manager. So here in the scripts, in the session, create a new script, session manager. Let's open this up. Let's use a bunch of services like Netcode and cloud save and authentication. So I'm going to clear that. And since we need this for our network, we are going to inherit from network behavior instead of mono behavior. A boolean to check if it is initialized, a function to initialize it. We're gonna write the code for that later. For now, we're just going to leave it empty. And then a singleton, so we could access it easily from everywhere. Let's also override on destroy and set the singleton to null. And let's create an enum. I am going to name it role. We have a role for client, host, and server. And here I create 3 static variables. One of them is role, the other one is join code, and the other one is lobby ID. So we can set these 3 variables here in the lobby menu. Here in the start game is going to be called by the host. So after we got the join code, we are going to assign it to the session manager join code. We're also going to set the lobby ID, and we are going to set the role to host. The same thing for the join game. Here it is. We are going to set the role to client, the join code, and lobby ID here. So in our session manager, we can start listening on certain events. So one of them is on a client connected. We need another function, by the way. So if you remember, in the lobby menu, we created a function to check for a join code. Here, check a start game status. It's going to check for a join code in our lobby data. But we didn't set the join code here in the lobby menu script. We're actually going to set the join code in our lobby here in the session manager. So whenever our host starts the game and it will connect to the game, then we are going to send the join code to all other clients. And we can easily do that by updating our lobby. We have the lobby ID. We stored it here in this variable. Now we are going to use options data, add a new variable called join code, and we are going to pass the code here. So let's go ahead and actually create the start function. We shouldn't do this in the awake function because certain services might need initializing in the awake, so we need to do it in the start. So first we're going to call initialize, then we are going to add the listener for our on client connected callback. So this is the function. Then we are going to check the role. If it is the client, then we're just going to use the network manager singleton, start the client. Otherwise, if it is the host, then we're going to start the host. And if we have the join code and lobby ID, we simply going to set lobby join code using this function here. So other clients could join the game as well. So basically, whenever a client connects to the host, this onClient connected function is going to be called, and the ID of that client is going to be passed here. Also, this function is going to be called for the host as well. So we are going to create another specifically for the clients. So this is going to be called on the client. This is going to be called on the host. And let's create a middleman for them. Here I am going to call initialize RPC, which this function is going to be called from the host, and it's going to be sent to the specific ID in the variable here. So here on client connected, first we make sure this is the server. Then we are going to create the parameters and pass the ID of the client. And then we're going to call initialize RPC, which is going to call this function on that specific client. So we're going to process the data for the client here, and after we are done, we are going to call this function on the host, which is going to instantiate a character for that client. So let's write the code for initialize client here. First, we are going to define an integer for character and the color. Now we are going to use cloud save to get the player data for our current account. We're going to get the character data of the authentication instance player ID, which is the player that is currently authenticated. And then we're going to store the data in this character variable and the color variable. If you remember, in the previous videos, we created a character customization system using our cloud save. So we access that data for this specific player. Then we're going to call instantiate character RPC, which we pass the character, player ID, and the color. This RPC is going to be sent to server. Now to instantiate the character, we need to create the prefabs for them. So let's go ahead and do that. So here in the editor, we are going to create a new script and name it session player. So if we open the session player, we need to inherit from network behavior. So we simply need a movement speed, a mesh renderer, because we need to set the color of the character. We're going to use that mesh renderer and the character controller to move it around. In the awake, we get the character controller. And in the update, if we are the owner of this character, we can move it around using horizontal and vertical inputs. Let's also create a function to apply the color to our mesh renderer here. So it is going to be sent to everyone, which means it's going to be called on all the clients in the network. We name it apply data RPC. It is going to get an ID. We can send the player ID just in case we need it for something, and then a color, which we are going to parse it using color utilities, and then we're going to assign the mesh render material color to that color. So that's basically our session play. Back to the editor. We also need a bunch of spawn points, so let's go ahead and create session spawn points. So if we open this, we can create a few variables, an array of transforms for the points, a boolean to check if it is initialized, and an order index to assign each spawn point to a single player. Make sure players don't spawn on the same point together. So that's the initialize. We need the singleton for this session spawn points, and then we can set the singleton to null on destroy. And to visualize it in this scene, we can use undraw gizmos to draw these points on the scene, and we can create a function to get a certain spawn position. We're going to pass the index for it. It's going to return the position for us. We can create a function to get a random spawn position. It's just going to use Unity Engine random between 0 and points length. And we can create another function, name it get spawn points ordered. So whenever we call this function, it's going to add 1 to the ordered index and it's going to return that index for us. So now if we go to the Unity editor, let's go ahead and create a empty game object, name it session manager. So let's attach the session manager. We also need a network object because it's inheriting from network behavior. So in the prefabs, I am going to create a folder and name it other. Let's create a prefab out of this session manager. So here I am going to create an empty game object, name it cube player. So let's go to the scene and take a look at this. Let's create a cube and let's also create a plane for our game. And then I'm just gonna reset the position, the same thing for this one. So if we take a look at this, let's bring up the cube first. So this is our cube player. I am going to remove that collider and here add a character controller. Also I'm going to add a session player and a network object. So that is going to be the mesh, and for the character controller, let's bring this up to this point. Now that's it for our cube character. So I am going to duplicate this and delete that cube, create a 3D capsule, and let's name this one capsule player. So bring it here, also bring the capsule here. So for the mesh we assign the capsule, and let's also duplicate it one more time and bring it here. So we delete that, create a sphere. This is going to be our sphere player, and that is the mesh renderer. We could bring this up to this point here, and also let's not forget to remove the collider for that one and this one. So we have 3 players. All 3 of them have character controller, session player, and a network object. So in the prefabs, I am going to create a new folder and name it characters. Also, let's create a new folder, name it materials, and inside this I will create a material. Let's just name it material. So for our cube we assign that, for our sphere, and for our capsule. Also, if we go to the prefabs characters, we can create a prefab at this one, and this one. And then we can go ahead and delete those, but we are going to leave the session manager here because that needs to exist within the session scene. Also, let's create a spawn points game object. So I'm going to assign the session a spawn points. We can assign the elements inside this array. Let's create an empty game object here. Another one, let's duplicate that. I'm gonna create, let's say, 4 spawn points, and here we can assign them to this list. That's another one, and here we go. And you can see that we can place them around inside our map. So I am going to save this scene, and now if we go to the session manager here, in order to instantiate the character we need to access the character prefab. So we go up here and we are going to create a variable of type network prefabs list, call it characters prefab. Now let's go to the editor. In the prefabs we can go and create Netcode network prefabs list. So we're going to create one of those. I'm going to name this characters, and I am going to create another one and name it other. So for the other, I'm going to assign the session manager. Let's create a new element and assign the session manager. Now for the characters, we have 3 characters. Here they are their prefabs. So first I'm going to add the cube and the capsule and sphere. This is in the same order that we have in the menu, customization menu. Here they are. The same order in the characters array: cube, capsule, and sphere. So that's it. If we go to the prefabs, we see them. Here they are. Now if we go to the scenes in the menu scene, our network manager is here. There is a variable here, network prefabs list. So we can go ahead and assign the characters, and then we can assign the other. Now we can access these variables in the network. Also, to sync the transform of our player characters, we need another script. So I'm going to go to the tools and create client network transform. So network transform already exists inside the netcode, but that's server authoritative. In order to make it client authoritative, we're going to create this script, and I'm going to change it like this. I'm going to add it inside the Unity Netcode components namespace, and I'm going to inherit from network transform, and then I'm going to override on is server authoritative, return false, which means it's client authoritative. So back to the editor, we can go to the characters and here select each one of them and attach client network transform. So we don't need to sync the scale, so we're gonna uncheck those. Here the cube player, attach that one, and for our sphere player we are going to attach this as well. Now that's our players. Let's save this. Now we can go to our scenes in the session scene. Let's select our session manager. Here we have the characters prefabs that we can assign. So that's it. And if we go to the session manager, here we can simply instantiate our characters. First we're gonna get a spawn point for it. Then we're going to get the prefab for it using that index of the prefabs list. Then we're going to use the network manager singleton spawn manager. We're going to instantiate and spawn this prefab for this client ID. Then we're going to say destroy it with the scene. It is the player object. And then we're going to pass the position and rotation. And then we are going to get the component of session player that is attached to that. And we're going to apply the data RPC, and that's it. Now let's go to the editor and save this. Also make sure to apply the changes to the session manager. So let's go to the menu scene. Now let's also go to the session player, create 2 more variables to store this data. You can do it here. And then we can create another function to apply the saved data. Now in the session manager, here after we instantiate this character, we can get all the session players and call that function to synchronize the player data for all the clients. Let's also go to the lobby menu in the join game. If we encountered any errors, we're gonna close the start panel. And here in the start session panel, let's also override the close. So here we go. We can set is loading to false, which is the loading variable, and also allow scene activation to false. So that's it. Let's go back to the editor, and then I'm going to get a build for the project. That's it. So let's run the build version and also the editor. So we have 2 clients. So now let's create a lobby here. So create a lobby, choose a name, max players, and confirm. So we're in the lobby. Let's open the lobby on the editor. Here we have the lobby, we can join. Now switch ready, and here as well switch ready. And if I click start, this one should start the game, and the editor is starting the game as well. And now we have both characters in the game. As you can see, I can move around the box on this client, and I can move around the capsule using this client. Of course, it has a delay because I am using the same machine to run both clients, and these clients are connected with each other through relay service, and there is no dedicated server. Basically, one of these two clients is the host and acting as the server, and data is being transferred between them using relay. Of course, this project still needs some polishing, but this is basically how you could implement relay and the lobby service. I hope you find this video useful. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.